Richard, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Tell us about Indonesia Investments and the services you offer your clients and the areas of expertise.
Well, Indonesia Investments is a business consultancy, and we mainly aim at informing foreign investors, which are non-Indonesian investors, about all investment possibilities in Indonesia. And we give objective and we try information, and we try to give as accurate information as possible, so they really know the real situation. And what we mainly do is we write and publish reports which gives updates on the Indonesian economy, politics, and also social issues, as long as these topics may influence the investment environment. We also write research reports, sometimes on demand. So when there's an institution which wants to receive a report on, for example, the automotive industry or whatever, we can give it, or just general research reports. And we also, through our network in Indonesia, we can assist foreign investors to develop a company. We can find business partners. We can arrange permits, investment permits, etc. So those are the main activities of Indonesia Investments.
What have your most recent papers looked at Indonesia and the new normal and changes in society and in business sectors? Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, obviously, all our recent reports are about the COVID-19 crisis, which is it's huge, of course, and it has derailed basically everything in the economy. So those business and social restrictions, they have far-reaching effects on the Indonesian economy, and business cannot continue as usual. So, for example, well, one of the consequences of the COVID-19 crisis is that e-commerce has now, it was already thriving before the crisis in Indonesia, but now since the crisis, it has really jumped e-commerce activities. That is also why the Indonesian government is now encouraging the smaller entrepreneurs to also join the digital economy, but it is actually quite complicated because there are a lot of people in Indonesia who really have no digital skills and also, well, lack the money to really go online. But yeah, one of the consequences of the COVID-19 crisis is the rapid development of the e-commerce industry in Indonesia. So that's part of the new normal, basically.
What will be the enduring impacts of the virus on the Indonesian economy and society, and some of the main challenges the Indonesian economy faces now?
Well, actually, the thriving e-commerce industry, that's one that will have a lasting impact. But I think also Indonesians' awareness of health and hygiene, I think, which has always been quite low, and I think because of this COVID-19 crisis, people start to become more aware of health and hygiene. And actually, what I will look into in a couple of weeks is whether this crisis has resulted in more Indonesians getting like health insurance, or whether there has been a jump in the in members of the universal healthcare scheme, which is run by the government. It's a huge healthcare scheme. So I think that's also a lasting impact, that it has managed to raise people's awareness, Indonesians' awareness of health and hygiene.
How is the Indonesian government changing its response to COVID-19? Is it really now ramping things up and it's actually doing a good job?
Well, I mean, there's actually an interesting change. So at first, it's also what I wrote in the report, is that the government, and this happened everywhere in the world, that they prioritized the health of people over the economy. So that's why you had this huge business and social restrictions. Well, the interesting thing is that I'm from the Netherlands, and when I read the news in the Netherlands, when the COVID-19 patients and casualties were almost zero, only then the government decided to loosen the restrictions. When in Indonesia, we don't see that. So in Indonesia, the number of new COVID-19 cases and casualties is actually rising exponentially, but the government has already started to loosen the restrictions. So it's quite risky, but basically it has no other option too, because if you if you maintain those tough restrictions, then you kill the economy. So already we've seen millions of people in Indonesia becoming unemployed. They are at risk of falling into full-blown poverty. So that's also a very, very big problem. And on the long term, it can kill even more people than the people who die of corona. So that's a big change. So that's the change in response. And then you asked also about whether it's doing a good job. Well, that's the Indonesian government has allocated plenty of funds to combat the crisis. Although in terms of percentage of GDP, it's quite low compared to other countries. But the big problem is executing the spending. That's always a big problem in Indonesia. And just yesterday or 2 days ago, the Indonesian president, Jokowi, he also complained about the slow execution of those funds. So, and one of the problems is that the bureaucracy in Indonesia is really tough. That's also one of the big obstacles in the investment environment. So to get the money, to spend the money by local governments or government ministries or other agencies, it's really tough, and partly because a lot of the government officials are a bit concerned to spend the money because they don't want to become involved in corruption scandals. That's always it's always a risk here in Indonesia.
What are the business conditions like in Jakarta at the moment?
At the moment, at the moment it's a little bit improving because the Jakarta administration, they eased the restrictions. So you see more activity on the streets. For example, traffic as well. Like 1 or 2 months ago, the streets were almost empty, and now it's severe traffic congestion, but not as much as before the crisis, obviously. But you can see that there's a small revival of economic activity. Shopping malls are open again, but they work they run at 70% of capacity. There are all sorts of health and hygiene protocols, so it's not running on full capacity, the local economy, but it is better now than 1 or 2 months ago.
Has COVID-19 really whacked the small and medium business sector?
Yeah, they've been heavily affected, and that's a big problem for the whole Indonesian economy because the small and micro entrepreneurs, they account for, and medium entrepreneurs, they account for like 60% of GDP, and also for around 97% of the labor force. They work in the micro, small, and medium enterprises. So they play a huge role in the Indonesian economy, but they are heavily affected. And usually, these smaller companies, they don't have enough liquidity. So once the income or the sales stop or diminish, then they get in serious trouble. And that's also why the government has allocated quite a lot of funds for these small and medium-sized companies. But again, execution is not going very well.
I can understand the government wanting to open up the economy, especially with the small and medium size of the micro business sector. Problem is, though, you can expect a rise in COVID cases. What's your healthcare system like, as in hospitals? Could they cope with a a mass influx of COVID-19 patients?
Well, at this moment it seems like it can cope with the patients. I've been in a hospital, but 2 months ago, and I've been into two hospitals over the past couple of months during the crisis, and it was it was not really that busy. Also on the emergency, in the emergency first aid room, there were not a lot of patients actually, which surprised me, but reading the Indonesian media, no, I don't see any stories about hospitals being too crowded or that they cannot handle patients. So at this moment, of course, Indonesia's healthcare system is quite fragile, but at this moment, it's, as far as I know, it can cope with the situation.
On a more general note, Richard, the Indonesia-Australia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement is the first bilateral trade deal Jakarta has signed with the G20 economy since 2008. Is it signing other bilateral deals, and does this signal a new era of openness to trade in Indonesia?
Gradually, yes, they're opening up, but it's always a big dilemma for the policymakers. Indonesia is very hesitant to engage in free trade deals, particularly because they are concerned that they cannot compete with the influx of foreign products. Indonesia has a huge population, which is getting richer, so it has an expanding middle class who have improving spending power. So they would like to import consumer goods at attractive rates, but Indonesian businesses are generally not as competitive compared to their foreign counterparts. So that's why Indonesians are always a little bit afraid of engaging in free trade deals. But over the last couple of years, there are a couple of free trade deals signed, and they want to sign more, including with the European Union. So it seems that they're opening up, but it goes at a slow pace.
Would be very interesting doing business in Jakarta, Indonesia. COVID still lurking around the corner, which is scary to say the least. Makes your job very interesting. Richard van der Schaar from Indonesia Investments, thank you very much.